Do either one of you have girlfriends?
I do. I have someone who I love very much. The exchange of love and sharing, it keeps you in touch with yourself and softer, and you know, otherwise you can become very hard and cold in here.
Erik?
No, not at the moment.
In fact, there was a woman who was writing to him at the time. Her name was Tammi Sackerman. She was married and living in a small Minnesota town. She would become Erik's wife.
Why on earth would you change your whole life for Erik Menendez?
He's the most sensitive, kind. I mean, he's always there for me.
After I interviewed him in 1996, Erik Menendez began writing to me. He wrote a great deal about prison life, and he showed a sensitive and compassionate side that I think would have surprised many people. It was a world very different from the privileged one he had grown up in. He wrote, "Prison is a jungle for people to make of themselves what they wish." He told me about his experience with brutality and wrote, "I was beaten by an officer several years ago." He also wrote me about the woman he had married. He said, "She is as classy, as genuine, and as courageous as can be. She is indeed my heart, my soul." When we return, the strange courtship of Erik Menendez and his wife, Tammi.
Could you kiss each other?
Why would a lovely woman want to marry a notorious killer? In other words, what explains Tammi Menendez, the wife of Erik Menendez? When I interviewed her in 2002, it was the first time she had ever spoken publicly. She was speaking on camera, she said, because she wanted the world to know who her husband, Erik, really was. I tried to be tactful.
You realize, with all due respect, that a lot of people think you're nuts?
Oh, yes. I've heard it before many times.
If I just say to you, why, what do you say?
My answer to that is I fell in love with him unexpectedly.
To say there have been obstacles along the way would be an understatement. Some of her friends dropped her. Her employer at her job, working with animals, fired her. But it didn't keep her away from Erik Menendez. Nancy Saslow made a documentary film about Tammi called Mrs. Menendez and has remained in touch with her. What was it about Erik that attracted Tammi?
He was smart, he was funny, he was kind.
Tammi first saw him on court TV during the trial and was drawn to him by sympathy.
What were your thoughts as you watched?
I could understand what he went through, and my heart went out to him.
Had you ever written to anyone before who was on trial or in prison?
Never.
Never.
I was going to write him one letter, tell him that I supported him, and if he wrote back, he wrote back. If he didn't, then I would never write again.
Erik was then 23. Tammi was 10 years older, married, and living in a small town in northern Minnesota, pursuing a career training and showing dogs.
Did your husband know that you were writing to Erik?
Yes.
Did he mind?
No.
Was he jealous?
No.
What did he think?
He thought it was kind of cool. He read the letters, and because there was nothing in there that was, we were just friends.
Many people thought that Erik and Lyle Menendez were two bratty, rich, spoiled kids who murdered their parents for the money. Did you think that?
Not at all. There was no way that they did it for the money. I never thought that.
You believe that Erik was sexually molested by his father?
Definitely. I know that because of the way he is and because of the way I talk to him about it, and there's definitely sexual abuse.
Nancy Saslow thinks that Tammi's belief that Erik was victimized is central to their relationship.
And I think it's also the reason that she is able to compartmentalize, if you will, what he did. I think if you had to put it into a sentence, that Tammi Menendez believes that Erik is a good man who did a bad thing.
After Erik was convicted in the second trial, Tammi stopped writing for a while because of a crisis in her own life. Her husband of 9 years had died, leaving her alone to raise her baby daughter.
Your husband died?
Yes.
And you turned to Erik for support. And did you get it from Erik?
Yes. I trusted Erik.
Why and how did you trust him when you hadn't even met him?
There was just something about him. Maybe it was because he was incarcerated, and I knew that he just was my safety place. He was very safe for me.
Were you surprised that you were feeling this way?
Yes, I was surprised and scared.
Why scared?
Because I did not want to get emotionally attached, you know, to him.
And it was happening.
It was happening, and I was trying to keep my distance, and, you know, it was not working out that way.
You know that one of the things that psychologists say is common to women who begin relationships with men in prison is that they have been mistreated by men in their lives. Do you fall into that category?
I think that in my marriage I was emotionally starved.
And you were never abused?
Not physically. Mentally, not physically. He was just not there for me at all.
Several months after her husband died, Tammi began going out on dates.
Did you write to Erik about the men you were dating?
Yes. He would say, you know, well, how much do you like this guy? You know, so, you know, I could tell there was a tinge of jealousy.
At one point, you were dating a doctor.
Yes.
And to most people, that would be desirable.
Yes.
You prefer a man serving a life sentence to a doctor?
Yes. Erik gives me so much emotional support, and that's what I need. I'm very independent, so I can get by on my own, and I don't really want somebody not there for me emotionally. I had that, and I don't want to go back.
4 years after she began writing to Erik, Tammi visited him in prison for the first time.
The prison situation was very scary.
You'd never been in a prison?
Never been in a prison, never seen a prison.
Did Erik know what you looked like at this point?
No.
The couple met in a large, bleak visitor's hall. Tammi says you can see how nervous she was in this photograph taken that day at the prison.
What did you think?
I was just thinking, I'm really attracted to this person, and it's not a good thing because he's incarcerated, and it was quite intense, and I know myself, and I tend to follow my heart, so I knew I was in trouble. And we visited again, and things just kept getting more intense.
So Tammi and her daughter left Minnesota and moved across the country to California, where she would be close enough to visit Erik in prison.
You come here alone, you're a pretty woman, you leave Minnesota, you had other men that you could have married. Why on earth would you change your whole life for Erik Menendez?
He's the most sensitive, kind, I mean, he's always there for me. He worries, you know, I never had that before.
These are things that he's drawn.
These are things that he's drawn. There's, when we first met, he would count the days, and then
And he did all this artwork.
He did the artwork, and 300 days.
This is 300. So every day you get a letter like this.
Yes.
Erik still creates handmade cards and drawings for special occasions. He writes to Tammi frequently, sometimes once or twice a day. They are long letters, often filled with poetry.
Do you think that Tammi and Erik will stay married?
I think they will stay married. She found herself in a relationship with Erik Menendez where she was everything. I believe that there's something in that is not only potentially intoxicating, but the pure definition of what it's like to feel important and to feel loved.
In June of 1999, 5 years after Tammi sent her first letter, they were married on visiting day at the prison. Erik's grandmother came, along with 2 aunts, one from each side of his family. The prison makes no exception for weddings. There were no flowers or presents. Their chapel, a tiny cinder block conference room.
Do you have a cake?
We had Twinkies.
Twinkies that you could buy in the
vending machine.
in the vending machine.
Yeah, we improvised.
Could you kiss each other?
Just, they did allow us to kiss each other after the wedding, so that was nice.
Forgive me if I'm too personal.
No, that's
but,
okay.
you know, but have you ever had sex with Erik? When I spoke to Erik and Lyle Menendez after they were convicted in 1996, they each told me that they hoped to be in a loving relationship. Considering their life sentences, it seemed hard to believe that this could happen, but it did for both of them. Lyle married Anna Erickson, a former Playboy model whom he met through correspondence in 1990. They divorced in 2001 because Lyle was writing to other women. Lyle met his next wife also through letters. In 2003, he married Rebecca Sneed, a lawyer. The two current Menendez wives have worked together on prison reform.
Prison families were getting together and speaking with legislators and trying to argue for the rights of prisoners. And that's why Becky came down. If Tammi Menendez is shy about being on camera and really doesn't want the notoriety, Becky even more so.
In 2000, Tammi moved again to be even closer to Erik. She bought a house just a few miles from the prison. She visited Erik 4 days a week, the maximum allowed. So you're staying 4 or 5 hours?
Yes.
That's a long time to talk.
And there's never a dull moment. I never get bored.
Because of...
We have so much to talk about. We just have so much fun.
You have fun?
Yeah.
That's hard for me to imagine.
I know.
Of course, there are some limitations to the relationship. Have you ever had sex with Erik?
No.
Your marriage has never been consummated?
No.
When you see Erik, when you come into the waiting room, are you allowed to kiss him?
We can hug and kiss on the way out and hold hands during the visit. And the holding of the hands during the visit is everything.
Do you find this very frustrating? You're a young woman. Forgive me if I'm too personal.
No, that's
but,
okay.
You know, but I'm sure people, I mean, you can never have this marriage consummated. You're not allowed to have conjugal visits.
It's not a problem for me. It's just not a problem for me at all. I've never had a desire to stray, or it's just not a problem for me at all.
As long as you have the emotional support and the affection.
Yes.
When I visited Erik with Tammi in 2002, Erik looked healthy and muscular, and the two seemed very much in love. Although state prisons don't allow TV cameras, Erik spoke with me by phone at the time.
Barbara.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm all right, Erik. How are you? A lot of people, Erik, think that Tammi was crazy to marry you. I mean, you're a maximum security inmate with a life sentence. What can you possibly offer Tammi?
I can't offer her most of the things that another husband can in terms of being with her physically and being able to hold her in that sense. What I can offer her is unconditional and complete devotion and love. She is everything to me. I love you very much.
I love you too.
Like many wives, Tammi believes in working on her relationship. She gave Erik the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he studied it.
You learned all the lessons. And...
Oh, yeah, I underlined them. My dog heard the book. Pages started coming out. Because every time we get into an argument, I have to run back to the book.
Yeah.
What did I say? Ooh, I said that? That's what she heard?
You said something wrong. Something wrong.
Tammi is Erik's link to the outside world. Although she can't bring him things on every visit, 4 times a year, prisoners are allowed to receive supplies.
Oh, and here's your beef jerky.
Okay, teriyaki jerky.
Usually he talks to me on the phone and helps me pick out what he needs. Now, do you like the Butterfingers? You can send him a watch or sweatpants or socks.
Then there was the issue of Tammy's child from her first marriage. Tammi, you have a little girl, a 6-year-old,
Yes.
who lives with you.
Yes.
Do you bring her to prison?
She does come and visit Erik. She does, yes.
It's one of the delights of my life. I get to tutor her in math and spelling and watch this little precious girl grow up.
What have you told her?
She asks why Erik is not home. And I tell her that he's not home because he did a very bad thing, and he has to stay here.
What will you tell her in a few years when she's old enough to really ask, what did he do?
I will have to tell her. I will have to tell her the truth, yes.
Today, Tammi lives in San Diego, near where Erik is currently imprisoned. They are still married. She sees him regularly, and they talk nearly every day. When I interviewed Erik Menendez, he said that his worst fear was that he would never be able to see his brother again. They are each at prison in California, but different prisons. They can write to each other, but have not talked nor seen each other since 1996.
And then these are all transcripts.
For years, Tammi and Erik have appealed his case. Tammi used her own resources until she ran out of money. Erik's lawyer, Chris Pixley, continued working pro bono.